Yo, what's going on, homies? It's your boy Brian here. So in my previous video, we spoke about wide grips or fat grips and the benefits of wide grips and how they can be utilized for muscle growth. And as promised, even though it took a little while, we're going to talk about GVT, which is another method of muscle growth training, in which you can also utilize fat grips with as well as you become a bit more advanced in weight training, and especially free weights training. So without any further ado, we're going to start first with an introduction to GVT and what that intertwines and what to expect, the benefits of GVT, some do's that you can do with GVT and some don'ts that you should avoid. So let's get started. So GVT stands for German volume training. Some of you may have heard of it, or maybe have tried it yourself without actually realizing what it was. Either way, it's a great method of training to break through muscle growth plateaus, and it works great in conjunction with other muscle growth inducing tools such as fat grips or even occlusion wraps as well. So let's look at some of the benefits of GVT. This method of training for hypertrophy, which is the scientific term for muscle growth, applies high amounts of volume and plenty of time under tension on every single rep. So the basic parameters that I personally use and have been using for a while are as follows: 10 sets, 10 reps, roughly around 90 seconds rest, with a tempo of 1 second coming up, 2 second pause at the top, 4 to 5 seconds coming down. So just like imagine a bicep curl taking 4 to 5 seconds to come down, about a second pause at the top, and then repeat again. The tempo initially when you first start the few reps don't sound or feel too crazy, but after maybe the third or fourth set, you are in absolute agony. And don't forget that you have to finish 10 sets of these of 10 repetitions. So you will reach a point where literally your muscle will be barely able to move, but that is the point. GVT works really well at breaking muscle growth plateaus. So if you are having trouble with growing a certain arm, like sometimes we have our left arm that's a lot smaller than our right, you can actually focus and apply GVT on that specific area to induce a bit more growth. Now, will it get exactly like the right arm? Probably not exactly, but if you train hard enough and you allow it to grow and you give it the necessary recovery, etc., that everything that you need to do to allow it to grow, you can potentially reach a point within both of your arms where you cannot tell the difference, even though there is maybe a small size difference or a small strength difference as well. But GVT allows you to break through those plateaus and allow yourself to induce some growth around your body for a particular area. So here are some do's that you should consider when doing GVT. So just like fat grips, GVT works very well for specific areas that you are finding difficult to grow or having any difficulty in progression. As stated before, you can add fat grips or occlusion training into the mix to amp up the intensity. But as I said in the beginning as well, just make sure you have had quite a bit of experience now, so you can sort of take on the stress in which you will be putting yourself through when you start adding fat grips or even occlusion training, as that really does intensify the training. You can also do supersets, or potentially, once you become very experienced, trisets with GVT to increase the total volume for the workout. Just make sure you avoid hitting the same muscle group too many times, as this can directly affect your future sets. So just as an example, if you're focusing on bicep curls but you are supersetting bicep curls with rows, well, rows involve biceps as well, so you got to make sure, or better yet, you better just make sure you're doing opposing muscles rather than the same muscle group. So avoid doing something like bicep curls and rows, because they both involve very similar muscle groups. Do something more like bicep curls with tricep extensions or dips as an example. In other words, just make sure you're doing opposing muscles when you're doing supersets or trisets. Complete GVT sessions on a low to moderate amount of intensity. So intensity means weight, especially if you use fat grips or occlusion training. It's quite frankly almost impossible to go super heavy when you're doing GVT because it's so much volume. And even if you try, I wouldn't recommend it, as you are putting yourself with enough mechanical stress and time under tension already through the sheer amount of volume that you put yourself through. So you're better off just simply going at a moderate to low load. And finally, with GVT, just be as strict as possible when you have chosen your structure. I tend to only stick to the 10 reps, 10 sets with the 19 seconds rest and the required tempo. I've never really tried anything else, and this protocol seems to work very, very well for me. So I really stress, and I can't stress enough, that you need to be as strict as possible within the structure. So make sure you complete a full 10 and you complete your full 10 reps, and you stick to the tempo and to the rest as close as you physically can. So here are some don'ts for GVT that you should be aware of. So if you're a beginner, I would personally limit yourself to just doing supersets first before attempting to add on a third set, aka trisets, and any other gym tools such as the fat grips or occlusion training, as stated before, because the sheer amount of stress that you're going to put yourself physically, you may not be able to come back to the gym for a few days, and that defeats the purpose of trying to get high volume numbers towards the end of the week. So you're just better off just sticking right through the basics for a while until you feel you can push for a bit more. So just like in the previous video, fat grips, avoid hitting the same muscle groups twice. You may impair your ability to finish your target sets and reps for the rest of the workout. Finally, GVT is very taxing. You will most likely be pretty sore the following day, so I would recommend at least 2 to 3 days rest between each muscle group. So if you plan on really focusing on growth for biceps, at least give yourself 2 to 3 days rest for biceps before going on another GVT or any other high volume protocol. Hitting the same muscle groups again back-to-back days, you then run into the risk of injury, joint pain, poor performance, or potentially inflammation, which is all counterproductive to hypertrophy, aka muscle growth, meaning you may end up in a state of overtraining, which can cause atrophy, which is the opposite of muscle growth. Anyway, homies, I hope you found this video useful and informative in some way. In the next one, I'm probably going to try and bite size and teach you guys some very, very basic periodization and how to program ways to gradually overload yourself to the point to induce some muscle growth, but at the same time programming some rest phases into your program so you allow your body to recover, put itself back together again before going on to the next phase of going back up again. So the whole point of these videos is that you eventually become your own best personal trainer, because eventually through training, experimentation, doing the right things, and also making mistakes, you slowly become your own best coach. So that is the goal with these videos. And yeah, I hope you found it useful, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.